Sometimes it's fun to take a little trip down video game memory lane and think about some of the more engrossing games that you never actually thought you'd like. Maybe you're a relatively new gamer and someone recommends picking up the Sega classics for a whirlwind of nostalgia. Maybe you only play first-person shooters and someone recommends you try something different like Skyrim or Final Fantasy VII. But if you're an RPG enthusiast millennial like me, this game, or series, was the 2000s Paper Mario games. I never actually thought I'd like this game due to its whimsical aesthetic, especially after playing the more ambitious Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. Why play a baby game when you can play something more serious like Final Fantasy VIII, right? Thankfully, I still played that baby game. Paper Mario was a great entry point and pivot for a lot of gamers looking to take their love of Mario into a whole new realm. Since its initial release, and the release of 2004's ridiculously successful The Thousand Year Door, this beloved franchise continued to change. Though evolving a franchise to keep things fresh is often appreciated by many gamers, the Paper Mario series' constant new additions and changes have met some mixed reviews because of it. If you're a casual gamer, and total respect if you are, every new entry in the series has been the next best thing. But did you know that if you even slightly mention the new Paper Mario games in a Facebook group full of millennial gamers, it's likely to cause a fight? Not many games have been this polarizing. A lot of Paper Mario purists have an if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. And while Nintendo has made it pretty clear that Paper Mario's current trajectory will not be returning to its roots, does that mean us nostalgic gamers will be left to grumble about how good Paper Mario was back in my day? One little development group who shares these sentiments will have you know that it is possible to still get these OG Paper Mario vibes. Moonsprout Games heard the purists' pleas for something that harkened back to the originals, and instead of waiting for Nintendo to make something that appeased us classic gamers, they went ahead and decided to make it themselves. In late 2019, Moonsprout launched Bug Fables, a Paper Mario-inspired game that has the same fun graphics, but with bugs. Not only to pay homage to its reference, but because there weren't any games coming out like it. In similar fashion to Paper Mario's segmented story approach, the game is broken up into 7 different chapters in search of the everlasting sapling, hence the title. Basically, the Queen of Bugaria is searching for the mythical tree created by an ancient race, aka the cockroaches, that grants youthfulness and powers to anyone who consumes its leaves. In order to find it, she establishes an adventurers guild and promises a hefty reward. It's a simple premise, and it's definitely serviceable, especially when you compare it to the standard, Peach has been kidnapped, now go save her, you sexy plumber. I mean, look at that stash. What a babe. You don't jump into these games for the deepest plot, you do it for the charm, for the humor. You want to put a smile on your face, and fortunately, this game does. From a human's perspective, Bugaria takes a backyard shenanigans approach to its setting. Several of the locations are made from litter, streams, plant life, and sandboxes. Bugaria is an adorable micro-fantasy land that may not be as grand as the Mushroom Kingdom, but it still manages to emanate a fully realized, lived-in world. One of the major drastic differences from Paper Mario is that you start with a full party almost immediately. Normally, I'd be opposed to something like this, as I often look forward to making it to the next chapter and acquiring a new ally like you do in Paper Mario. However, I didn't mind the different approach this time around due to the great and distinct personalities of the protagonists. The game centers around Vi the Bee and Kabu the Beetle, who, in most aspects, fulfill the role of your standard adventurers looking for fame. Vi might be one of the best written characters I've seen in a while. She's your hasty, selfish instigator who typically pushes the majority of the humor in the game. Her eyes also make her look like a serial killer. Kabu, on the other hand, is an adorable, honorable, level-headed hero who serves as a great counterbalance to Vi's antics. Leaf, the amnesiac moth, who you pick after the intro chapter, is the driving force for the majority of the game's events. These characters are a nice contrast to Mario's pantomimes as we get to see them grow and develop as the game progresses. For better or worse, Mario just stays Mario. The supporting cast in Bug Fables is also stellar. Several of the recurring characters, antagonists included, have some distinct personalities that make them memorable. Several townspeople have some hilarious lines worthy of a chuckle, typically at Vi's expense. At one point, you meet one of Vi's siblings, and my childhood felt personally attacked based on how the two realistically felt about each other. In general, the game does an excellent job with its humor, and that's something that not many games accomplish well. It never feels forced. When it comes to the graphics, there's really not much more to say aside from they're great. A lot of the bugs are super adorable. Look at these bugs, I mean, look at them. This one, and my personal favorite, Crispy. Look how adorable this chunky baker is. They're so cute. Even some of the enemies are adorable, like these malicious blobs of honey. Sometimes the toads, goombas, and koopas and other creatures in the Mushroom Kingdom tend to blur together, but there are such a variety of bugs in this game, and a lot of them are distinct. Though there are some similarities to Hollow Knight in bug design, I feel like it would be impossible for them to not overlap due to both mimicking a medieval style. And though the locations aren't pushing on any graphical boundaries, there are a lot of minor details in each screen that really add to the charm. It's kind of funny that in no way does this game need to be stylized with the paper aesthetic, as the characters aren't actually made of paper like they are in Paper Mario, but it doesn't lessen the experience. Speaking of Paper Mario, some familiar Paper Mario features are present in this game. Vi can give info on any NPC similar to Goombella or Goombario, and it tends to be just as hilarious as it was with those characters. Experience scales depending on your party's level, and medals work the same as badges, so if you've ever played Paper Mario before, you'll already have a good grasp of the core mechanics of the game. Cooking is back in this game too, which is awesome because it's one of my favorite things to appear in games. And it's extra adorable in this game because all the food are bug themed. I feel like it serves a bigger purpose in this game than it does in Paper Mario because all the base items don't tend to cut it in terms of restoring your health or your MP. Due to your party's varying abilities and the special requirements needed to defeat certain monsters, the game gives you the option for party members to pass their turn onto another. Honestly, it's one of the most intuitive mechanics I've seen in a while. If you're a frequent RPG player like myself, you're drowning in wasted healer and supportive class turns. Turn relay is a great idea, especially among a cast of 3 characters, and you'll need to use it. Are there several enemies that decided to bury themselves underground on their turn? Just have Vi pass her turn to leave so he can go twice and put them in their place. Do some assholes need to be flipped upside down before they can be damaged? Give Kabu a few turns to strut his stuff. I'd love to see a mechanic like this in other games. Imagine if your party is about to die in Final Fantasy, so your black mage passes his turn to the group's white mage for an extra turn of healing. It adds an extra layer of strategy that some games need. Bug Fables tends to run on the easier side, but hard mode is fortunately unlocked right off the bat, and it's definitely a worthy challenge. Remember when we had a full episode of the RPGaymer podcast talking about the difficulty in video games that's available on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts, including a link in the description? Right now I'm winking at you, you just can't see it. In most games, difficulty is an option that you select at the beginning of the game, but in Bug Fables, it's a free option that you can toggle on and off at any point in the game by equipping it as an item. The thought of difficulty changing due to it being equipable is hilarious. I really appreciate this because I like trying RPGs on higher difficulties, especially since most of the Paper Mario games tend to be on the easier side. I will say it was a pretty adequate challenge, and there were a few times I wiped during a boss battle. Fortunately, the game gives you several prep options upon defeat, so it really could just be a matter of learning the block timing or changing up your badges. Enemies are a bigger risk but have higher payouts when defeated. For someone who doesn't like to have to impose personal challenges in easier games just to make them more challenging, it was a relief to see that this was an option. One additional feature I really thought was super cute was the inclusion of a card game called Spy Cards. If you know anything about me, I'm a sucker for any type of competitive collective-based side quest that lets you deviate from the main story for a little while. Spy Cards is a great way to occupy time when you started a new chapter. You basically acquire a new card by scanning enemies in battle, and you use those monsters to build your deck. It's simple in the sense that you ultimately just want to have the higher damaging hand each round, but there are definitely some minor curveballs you can throw at your opponents to catch them off guard. Some cards will also combo off each other's, which is pretty neat. Overall, the game is super fun, but there aren't enough opponents or opportunities to play it throughout the course of the game. If none of the previously mentioned features have sold you that this game is heavily inspired by Paper Mario, nothing sells it better than the music, which is super delightful. They're so similar that you may not have noticed I used Bug Fables music in the Paper Mario clip at the beginning of this video. The intro screen theme hit me right in the nostalgia nuts as soon as I loaded up the game. The battle, victory, and level up themes are the closest you can get to Paper Mario while still maintaining its own identity. Oh baby, most of these songs are certified bops. One of my personal favorites was the Outskirts song, as it really sets the tone for a happy, lighthearted adventure. There's something to be said about a soundtrack that really keeps it simple, and that something is, "Boots the house down, mama, yes, God!" One thing I really appreciated was the switch in battle themes about halfway through the game. It really helped keep the battles from getting stale. And aside from the battle themes, I never really found many tracks that repeated too much. As with any game, there are a few uninspired tunes, but that's mostly a preference versus being a fact. If a lot of this game sounds appealing to you, and it should, it is important to note that this game isn't free of a few areas for refinement. A lot of the enemy encounters are glorified beatdowns and are missing Paper Mario's unique ways of beating enemies. We've all been living in the Mushroom Kingdom for the past 30 years, so we're pretty familiar with the monsters. We've seen what they can do, and we know the ins and outs of how to beat them. Bug Fables tries to recreate that, as some of the bug foes really could just be swapped with Goombas and Koopas, but it still often felt like you're trying to do a bunch of damage as opposed to pulling off a really clever stunt to defeat them. Typically in Paper Mario games, you have a plethora of side characters who you cycle through in order to get through most encounters. So this could be due to the fact that you're locked into the same 3 party members the entire time. Also, though having a lot of side quests is definitely a plus, the pacing of them makes the game drag a bit. There were times when a full 2-hour recording was exclusively for the 4 to 5 minor side quests I picked up at the beginning of a chapter. This wouldn't have been an issue had the quests not taken me back through the most recent chapter's dungeons. A lot of the quests could have been set to occur as we're traveling through a new location for the first time. It almost came across like it was used to pad the overall length of the game. Like, is it really that likely this ant dropped his doll after I combed through this area 30 minutes ago? Obviously, this isn't exclusive to this game as it is all RPGs, but since encounters take a little time to get through, it can be a little tedious to have to backtrack. Most of the chapters are already a good length, especially the insanely long final chapter, which does tend to plod on a bit, so this could have been handled a bit better. With all that said, the weirdest thing was the acquisition of new adventuring abilities. The way allies learn new interactive abilities is weird and forced. It makes sense for Leaf, as his constant memory recovery could trigger some latent abilities, but it felt very weird and unplanned for Vi and Kabu. At one point, the game actually makes fun of itself by other party members asking, "Why didn't you just do this sooner?" I was hoping that at some point a 4th party member was going to join the gang for some of the harder to reach areas, but I was really just waiting for Vi to acknowledge that she can fly? It's silly, but it's not a deal breaker. Okay, so aside from just liking spending time with me cause I'm so cute, you're probably wondering, should you play this game? And my answer is yes, abso-fucking-lutely. No issues are glaring enough that they would put off both casual or veteran gamers. They're really just points for refinement for any sequel. Also, late game lulls are an unfortunate trend in most RPGs anyway, so it wouldn't be fair to pin this solely on Bug Fables. When I beat the original Paper Mario, I knew I had just played something special. Though it took a few years for A Thousand Year Door to release after the original, it fulfilled the notion of wanting more. That's exactly how I feel when completing Bug Fables. I want to see more of this world. There are so many different stories that could be told from so many different bugs in this kingdom. It's a game, and hopefully a series, that saw the strengths of the original Paper Mario game that added some fun new ways to play instead of completely overhauling the design. And because of that, it's better. Since we don't really know if we'll ever see a Paper Mario that harkens back to the good old days, Bug Fables will have to do for now. Fortunately, it satisfies in every way.